News stories were coming in about this strange virus in Wuhan, China. It was weeks before we saw the first cases in the US. As the numbers went up each day, my curiosity got the best of me, and I started plotting the curves. Here's stories from real people all over the world and how they've responded. I'm Sally Hendrick, founder of Shout Your Cause, and this is COVID-19, The World Responds. Hi, Sigrun, is that how you say your name?
Mm-hmm.
Yay, so good to have you here with me. My name is Sally Hendrick, and I know we've met a couple of times in person before, and you're very well known in the business space online, and I very much appreciate you being here with me.
Well, thank you for having me, Sally. I'm excited to have this talk with you today.
Yeah, this is a really hot topic these days. Obviously, we're talking about COVID-19, but I kind of want to mix that up a little bit with what you do online as a businesswoman and what I do online as a businesswoman, and how we can be, talking about this to our audiences out there, and also to people, who are interested in what's happening with COVID-19, just to see how the world is responding.
Yeah.
So tell me, what is it that you do? Give me a little bit of background.
I have a coaching business, and I help female online entrepreneurs take their business to the next level, 6 or 7 figures, depending on what the aspiration is. I'm on a mission to accelerate gender equality through female entrepreneurship. And I think my unique way of helping my clients is that I fast track the results. You could even call me a slave driver if you want to use that word.
Yeah.
I kind of many of my clients tell me they're a little bit scared of me, but that's exactly what they need, so I can kick them in the butt and get them to do what they wanted to do, and they get fast results.
Awesome. So how fast are you usually pushing these concepts to them?
So I went from, I started with one-on-one coaching over 6 years ago, and then I went to groups, and then, I have now a year-long online program. But what I noticed when you have this all set up, you created your modules, your videos, your worksheet, and everything. And then I was just like, what are they doing? Why are they not doing it?
Yeah.
And I figured out that the completion rate of online courses is 9%. I figured out that some other people had really been doing this for even longer time than me, and they had this data. And I'm like, that is crazy. People buy a $2,000 or $3,000 online course, and then they don't do it. So I started 2 years ago with accountability. And that doesn't mean that I hop on the phone with every person. I just create this, you could call it group pressure to take action. I started with something called Samba Summer School because I thought, well, in the summer, it's going to get even worse. People are going to do less. So I said, Samba Summer School is coming. Samba Summer School is coming. So my program is called Samba, Sigrun's Online MBA. And I created a summer school just for my clients. This is not for outsiders. You have to be in the program. And I'm like, it's coming. And they didn't know what it was. And one day I go on Facebook Live and said, you are going to create your first or next online course in this summer. And you're going to follow me exactly. I'm going to go do Facebook Lives from time to time. I'm going to tell you exactly what to do, how to do it, when to do it. And then you have to fill out progress reports with me. Who's in? So they had to sign up. And there was this group pressure of signing up. Yeah, I'm in. And I'm like, no, I'm going on holiday. And I'm like, I don't care if you're going on holiday or not. You're an entrepreneur. You joined this program because you want to have success. And they're like, okay, I'm in. I said, you can run your online course from anywhere in the world. You can be on the camping site. I don't care. So
I wrote a course on a train going from Prague to Krakow, Poland. I wrote a course on that train that day, and then I wrote another one on the way back.
Yeah. So basically, I created this 10-week process. The first time I ran it was I don't know, 120 people signed up out of 500 in the program. The year after, people were like, are you doing it again? Are you doing it again? They were like months in advance, so excited. I'm like, the modules are in the program. You have access to it. No, we wanna do it with you because, I create this, I really inspire them to do it. And then they all kind of force each other to participate. So I doubled the participation rate. Again, about 500 people in the program. My program is year long. It's not lifetime access. And we had over 264 people in the second round. And then I was discussing this with my mastermind group, how amazing this was, and that the completion rate is 90%.
Wow, that's amazing.
I go from 9% to 90% because I know exactly, like, if they fill out all the progress reports, I say that's completed because they didn't just watch videos, because that's how some online courses count it. If people watch all the videos. Yeah, that's 9% completion rate. But in my program, or with this process, they've actually done the work. Otherwise, they cannot fill out the report that I have them fill out. So I'm discussing this with my mastermind, and they said, this has to be a part of the program. Every time a new client joins your program, you have to do this. And I'm like, oh, that's going to be so much work for me. But I found a way. I hired a coach, and I asked my students, who wants to help me run this process for new students? I have one coach now who is kind of like taking over coaching calls for me in this process. And then I have 10 mentors from the program. So people have actually done the process themselves. So they can just speak from their own experience. Right. So now every time I launch Zumba, we have this 10-week kickstart in the beginning.
Yeah.
And everyone creates an online course. And I added at the end, creates an upsell. And people have been making thousands of dollars. Like, often these are beginners, but also people who have been years in business, they don't have a good online course, or they can add a new one. So we've had people, six-figure, multiple six figures also participating. Now, I got so excited with, yes, we are having COVID-19 and it's not, good what's happening. It's very serious and it's sad. But at the same time, as an entrepreneur, you see an opportunity. And I'm like, oh, I can now maybe help them market and sell the course that they maybe have created with me for. Or if someone is offline and had lost all their business, they can quickly get their business online. So I just created another 10-week marathon, and we are now in the 4th week, and many people have already paid for the course. Like I help them
sales. Like they've already made their sales to pay for the course that they invested in. Is this the recession-proof one that you've been promoting, or is this something else?
I have a live boot camp that is 2 days where you create your recession-proof offer, and that's what I'm promoting officially. So once people join that, I make them an offer to actually join a 10-week program where teach them, where I teach them how to sell the offer. Yeah, but that's long story short. What I do.
But that makes total sense. And the nice thing about it is that the audience that I have typically is the similar audience, the online entrepreneur or someone who's trying to get into that space. That's who's listening to me, in addition to the people that I know personally and also within the state and so forth, because of the guests that I've had on this podcast. So just to give you a little background on that, I've had the chancellor of the University of Tennessee at Martin on the podcast. He's obviously here in Tennessee, and he's talking about what's happening with the college students, the college online teaching, and so on and so forth. And then I've had someone who was a business owner who was making sound reactive technology for fire tables. So like a table that's outside at a bar and it's got fire in it, and there is Bluetooth music pumping into it and making the fire dance. That's what he does. He's actually a business partner of my husband's as well, but he's now making hand sanitizer in bulk and selling to retail, big box retail stores. And he's connecting his Chinese connections, which is why he got into this, to people here who are now making PPE, the personal protective equipment, the masks, the face shields, and all of those things. And he's gone through all the hoops to figure out the FDA regulations that the US has. And so, but he's a fire table guy. I mean, you know, it's crazy. And then another business owner who does something else, and doctors and whoever. And, you know, one of the doctors that I've talked to is an online entrepreneur as well. She has taken her her podiatry practice. She's made shoes. She has started like a health type program and does a yoga thing online as well. And I've known her for a while, but the interesting thing about talking with her is that she understands things from the physician's perspective, and she has a lot of people in her network that are physicians, and she lives in New York, so she's getting a lot of inside scoop, if you will. She's also the fiance of someone who is advising behind the scenes with the models, the numbers that are the predictive models. And so the fact that we've got these connections all around the world in different ways, it's just fascinating. Like, you're probably being able to reach people that you have never reached before, because now they're in a situation where they're like, oh, this could be a crisis. I really need to be prepared for something like this if I need to roll out an online program.
Absolutely.
I mean,
You know, the people that joined my new program that I just created overnight, basically, I call it online turnaround because I used to be a turnaround CEO 16 years ago. So I decided, oh, this is an online turnaround. So it's for people who have not had an online business before, or if they have an online business, but they're not at six figures yet, because I have programs, you know, for six-figure, multiple six figures and $1 million business owners. But in my marketing, you will mostly see me with, you know, people who want to take their offline business online, or they want to scale to six figures. And I'm seeing someone who's been a Qigong teacher for 20 years. I'm seeing a doctor that was fully booked and now she can't, you know, she has to take it online. I'm seeing, you know, nutritionists and dance teachers, and, you know, and it's so much fun to work with these people and change their lives and see them make money only a few weeks into this new business.
Yeah, and that's pretty amazing. Now, when it comes to the COVID-19 situation, the reason why I reached out to you was because I saw where you had posted on Facebook some information about what was happening in Iceland, which is originally where you're from, right?
Yeah, I'm from Iceland, and it's been interesting to see how Iceland has dealt with the situation. You know, I was in the US when the first case was discovered, and I think it hit me personally deeper somehow than in any other country. And I think it was actually the same day there was the first death in the United States. So it kind of coincided. So it got pretty serious for me. And I flew to Iceland from the United States, and it was a stark difference because in the States, I started to look for hand sanitizer. And on that first day that the first death was, I found several bottles in CVS. So I was like, oh, I buy one bottle. And then 2 days later, I thought, oh, that was silly of me. I should have bought more. I go back to the shop. Everything is sold out. I fly out of the United States a few days later. There is nowhere hand sanitizer to be found. Is nothing at the airports, in no shops. I go into multiple shops, nothing to be found. People are selling all kinds of other stuff instead, thinking that will help. And then I land in Iceland, and there's hand sanitizer everywhere at the airport. And I'm like, okay. Yeah, what happened was in Iceland is, of course, it's an island. And you could say, oh, that's easier, and you're fewer people. Yes, we're only 366,000. But that does not really explain it. We have a crisis control committee, you know, similar, I guess, to CDC in the United States. and it took over. We don't have politicians deciding what to do.
Right. You have the people that are in charge to actually
scientists,
step up.
doctors. Yeah. So there's a police officer in charge, and then there's 2 doctors with him. And luckily, one is a woman. We always make sure we have a woman on board. And they started daily meetings, and they would share what's happening. And then they decided to, if you came, for instance, from the skiing areas in Italy, from, North Italy, you would have to go into quarantine. And what they did, because Iceland does not have a direct connection to Italy, like flights normally, but there were few flights over the ski seasons. So when there were direct flight coming in, it could not park at the air terminal. And this was beginning of March, early March, where I feel, because I was in the US at the same time, I didn't see the same kind of sense of urgency for what was happening. So yeah, the plane had to be kind of parked to the side, and then, people in gear would kind of, it was completely different. Like you're like not a welcome person anymore, coming from Italy. And then it had to all be tested. And they, as a precaution, they went into kind of, quarantine. And then, they would be tested if they had anything, if they showed any symptoms. That was the testing in the beginning. Like you had to show symptoms to get testing. They quickly realized they had to change that and open up that more, but the health system didn't have capacity for it. So a private company stepped up and said, we'll do it for free if we can publish the results.
Yeah. Is
So,
this the one that was published that talked about the 50% of people were asymptomatic in Iceland?
Yeah. It's called Decode, the company. Actually, it's owned by American company. So it's not even Icelandic. It's an American company that is doing research in Iceland. The founder is still CEO. So he sold it off a long time ago, but he decided he's going to test anyone. So people who thought they might have something, they came first to the testing. But then he said, well, to make this really proper research material, we need to test people that don't want to be tested, or or don't think they're sick and haven't talked to anyone they think is sick. So they actually kind of sent out, letters or emails or whatever, and reached out to people and got enough people so they really have a feeling of how many are infected. And the latest data shows 0.8% of the country is affected.
Now, what about in all?
Well, overall, this is like the test, what they have done so far. Now, we haven't started the antibody tests yet. This was really on the height. Now, Iceland has gone down to 0 now. 0 cases.
Nice.
Yeah. They've absolutely flattened the curve, and there was no shutdown. So how was it done? As I said, the example of the plane before was an example. But what was happening when they were focusing on North Italy, actually, people were coming in sick from Austria, UK, and United States.
To Iceland, already infected.
Yeah, and they didn't know that. As soon as they discovered it, I think on March 5th, they discovered 1 or 2 cases from Ischgl, Austria. And whatever the doctor is called, the one that
epidemiologist.
Pandemic. The head doctor of that, he contacted this little skiing village in Austria and told them, I already have 2 cases from people who came and were skiing there. So you have something serious going on and you need to check it. They ignored his advice and kept the skiing area open for another 10 days. And Spiegel is a well-respected magazine in Germany who does a lot of research. They do a lot of research. They think there will be a lot of lawsuits against this village because they knowingly continued, even though probably the whole village was infected, And there are thousands of cases in Scandinavia that can be directly traced to this village.
And all over Europe.
And all over Europe. Yeah.
Yeah, all over Europe. Because I remember seeing the reports about the ski resort in Austria, right? Austria.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize that there was that background story about saying, oh, by the way, this is coming from where you are.
Yes.
So you need to do something. And then they ignored it. Yeah, that's definitely.
They ignored it. And 10 days is a long time. 10 days is a long time when you have a pandemic. So they started in Iceland to have more danger zones. They had North Italy as a danger zone, and then they started to say Austria. But it at some point it was just the whole world, really. It didn't matter where you were coming from.
Right.
But the key was, in the beginning, it was very diligent in testing, tracing, and quarantine. And the funny thing is, Icelanders don't like to follow rules. I think it's very funny. We like to break rules. If you tell someone in Germany that they have to follow the rules and they have to stay at home and do this, and I live in Switzerland right now. I come from Iceland, but I live in Switzerland. If you tell a Swiss person they have to do something, they'll do it. But in Iceland, they will not. But the difference is, if there's an avalanche, a volcanic eruption, earthquake, or in this case, a pandemic, then they actually listen and they will do what is best to help other people. So there's this solidarity. It's not individualism. It's the opposite. It's like we stick together. So, if I stay at home, I have to do it. So that started to be, shared with people, like, you stay at home. When you go to the shop, use hand sanitizer, use gloves, meet as few people as possible and all that stuff. So everyone was just staying at home. So they never had to close shops. Even non-essential shops have stayed open the whole time. And this is not the Swedish, solution, which has caused a lot of deaths. We've had 10 deaths in Iceland. But it was really key, the testing, tracing, and quarantine, and then the voluntary self-isolation of the public, and then still keeping everything like, yes, the economy is horribly hit because tourism was so big. But still, if you put tourism aside, a lot of other companies have been able to continue business as before. And they also, middle of March, they already had a tracing app.
Wow.
They were so quick. In Switzerland, they're still discussing if they should create one. And I'm like, seriously? Like 6 weeks behind, what are you thinking, guys?
Switzerland was pretty hot there in the beginning when all the cases were getting reported, because when I was looking at all the numbers in the early days for the US, Switzerland was in the top 5.
Switzerland is not good. Yeah. So the issue with Switzerland is they're neutral. Generally, they try to be neutral worldwide. And I think they were just trying to be too nice to the Italians. So the borders were not closed. And there's a lot of Italians that work in Switzerland. It's an Italian area in Switzerland where everyone speaks Italian. So they get 40% more salary by working there. So they were keeping the borders open. Now, you want to keep them open for food and other things that we need from these countries. But people were just going back and forth. And so that was a big, big mistake that Switzerland made. And I was just looking at the numbers today because they are starting to opening everything up. And I'm like, in Iceland, they're not even opening up until next week. Even though Iceland didn't close anything, they still had
guidelines,
and restaurants ultimately, actually, I think they shut down restaurants in the end, and hairdressers. So they're starting to open that up again, but all other shops stayed open. Yeah,
now,
and the tracing
app. Did Iceland step in as the government? Did the government step in there and help financially for people who were affected by this?
Yeah, there has been 3-step process where they're helping. For instance, companies can reduce you can reduce the work down to 25%, or you can even say this person is not working right now.
Mm-hmm.
Company will have to pay 25% salary, but the government will pay the rest. So that's
Right.
kind of a figuring out, like, because it's just paused. But if like with the airlines and tourism, because that's really hard hit, then they're stepping in to help you lay off. In the beginning, they said no to it. People,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of hotels and restaurants said, we cannot even afford, there's a 3-month salary you have to pay when you let someone go. It's not like 2 weeks in the US, it's 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
So 3 months is a lot when you're running a company. You may not be
if you
able
have
to
to lay off a
afford
lot
it.
of people, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, so the government is stepping in now and paying for that. But I think Switzerland has done a lot better than Iceland. So that's where you see the differences. In Iceland,
Mm-hmm.
we did really well on the health side. We flattened the curve. We're down to 0 cases. In Switzerland, they could have done better with the borders and all of that. But when it comes to money, well, then they know what to do, because there's a lot of money in Switzerland.
Mm-hmm.
They announced already middle of March, you can get a interest-free loan, 10% of your last year's revenue. And then they announced the date where you can apply for it. 24 hours later, everyone had their money.
Oh, amazing. It's not happening here.
So
I'm sure you've heard horror stories about the US, but we don't need to go into that.
No, let's not. I have heard them all. Yes.
Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, there's a lot of challenges that we're going through. Obviously, a lot of fears. There's fears about the health side of things, and there are fears about the economic aspect of it as well. I think a lot of people who have been on the positive side when it comes to the economics part, maybe they've been hit financially to a certain extent, but they're okay. You know what I mean? Like they've got some sort of base or foundation, but there's a lot of people who don't. And so I think that the opinions and all the things that are going around all the time have a lot to do with where someone is in the situation. Mm-hmm. Long term, though, I think that the attitudes may also change if this continues, for several more months. We're talking about much more devastation financially. Health-wise, we may be bringing that down around the world. Obviously, Iceland's brought that all the way down. But Iceland, if they're dependent on so much of the tourism, how long can this go? Because you've got this pristine, sterile island now, and no one can come to it.
Well, actually, the borders are open in Iceland.
Really?
They're not closed, but if anyone comes now, they have to go into a 2-week quarantine.
Oh, well, but so it's not going to be
that's not very exciting for someone who wants
No, you're not like going to Vic to look at the black beaches, and you're not going to that fun little the thing I thought was the best there was there was a museum along the way when you go towards Vic or Vik or whatever you call it, and the museum had a lot of information about this man who had collected all of these materials from the time before the war, because whenever the war happened, the Americans come, they fly in, they bring all this new new everything, new stuff, new supplies, new materials. And it's like Iceland just changed from this, very old-fashioned medieval almost place to this modern day world. And this guy had collected all of these artifacts and things that people had used that they had been burning because they felt like, oh, we're free to this new world and we can burn all this old stuff that we had. And there was a museum all about those things along the way. So yeah, if people are coming to Iceland, they're not going to go quarantine for 2 weeks if they're wanting to tour around and do this and that. And so the tourism dollars would not be there.
No, this is the guideline until May 15th. So let's see what happens after then.
Yeah.
I am not too worried about Iceland generally because we come from a fisherman nation. And I do think that's kind of in the blood, where if there's fish in the sea, you catch it and then you can buy yourself a car or a TV or go on holiday. If there's no fish in the sea, you don't. And I think this is also how, there have been ups and downs in my life where I've had less money, especially as a student. Like, you just adjust, you do less, you do different things.
Mm-hmm.
And before 2010, annual visitors to Iceland were 500,000. Last year, it went up to 2.5 million.
Mm-hmm.
So what if it just goes back to 500,000? Is that so bad? Like, we had a life before, it was going okay. We just maybe had tech companies be number one or fisheries being number two. Tourism wasn't one of the pillars of getting money into the country. But I think if they find a way to get the tourists back, how attractive is it to actually travel to a country where there are 0 cases? You want to go there on holiday.
Yeah.
And there are certain countries I don't want to go to right now. And even in Switzerland, I'm not feeling too safe. So I'm just staying at home. So I hope they find a way. But if they don't, I'm not too worried. I just hope that the main airline, Iceland Air, I hope they stay alive, because they are flying like 6 flights a week now. And before they were doing 25 flights a day. So this is a big change. And I want to be able to go to Iceland and see my family. And so, yeah, I hope the government will step in. I think actually they will. I think with airlines, governments will step in, because this is similar to the crisis 10 years ago where, the financial crisis in 2008, they stepped in for the banks. I think they will step in with airlines. Like, we don't want to be isolated. Iceland is an island. We need to have airplanes, to go anywhere, even just I don't know, it could be some emergency and people are still trying to travel back to their home country, whether it's US or Iceland.
Well, one last question that I wanted to ask you, and I've asked everybody, I think, so far, is that in spite of all of the fears and the devastations and the things that are happening, what are your bigger hopes in the world as a result of COVID-19?
I hope to see more solidarity. I am seeing signs of it. There's a certain fear of here's my country. I'll fix my country. I'll not help another country. But I'm hoping for more solidarity. I see parts of it. I'm also seeing I travel a lot, and suddenly I realize maybe I don't need to travel so much. So maybe we'll help the environment a little bit by traveling less. And when we travel, we do it mindfully. We do it carefully. It's not just because, I go for 2 days to a conference. We do it more hey, this is a big thing. I'm traveling. I'm going to make the most out of it.
Yeah.
I think it has brought many families together. Some families not so, and maybe we'll have some divorces as a result, like happened in China. But I see it as a positive thing. I'm just an eternal optimist. I believe when all is said and done that we will have a better world.
I think I agree with you on that. I definitely see a silver lining in a lot of different ways from different perspectives. And what's funny about that question is that I don't think I've gotten the same answer from anyone yet.
That's good. That's great.
Yeah, I know. It's good, isn't it? I may have to do some posts on that, make that just social media post of the day, the hopes for the future, and put the quotes underneath, of who it's from.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. All right. Well, if there's anything else that you'd like to share, I'd love to hear it. Anything else that you want to mention?
No, I do, talking about, sharing about COVID-19. This is also, some people are not sharing much. And I decided to really share. So I do a daily talk on my Facebook Live, on my Facebook page. I do a daily Facebook Live talking about what I'm doing. Not like I do talk about how cases have gone down, COVID-19, but the topic is more like turnaround. Like what can you do right now? What am I doing in my business? I'm very transparent in my business. I've talked about, like, I took a 50% pay cut myself. I asked my employees to take a 20% pay cut. It's not because we are hit necessarily financially. Actually, we are kind of making more money than before, probably 10 or 20% more. But who knows how things will look like 3, 6, 9 months from now. And my experience from turnarounds is you have to be proactive. You have to do things earlier than you think you need to do them, because it's much worse to come, because when you're in the panic, when you're in the shock, this was the right time to announce the changes in the business. If I come 3 months later and say, hey, now you need to take a pay cut, people are like, are we doing so badly, or what's wrong, or are we going bankrupt? And I'm like, no. I announce it when the feeling of the time is right, not when I need it. And if we don't need it, no worries, we can pay bonuses. But in case we need it, we're being cautious.
Very smart business lady. Definitely somebody to know. And I cannot wait to come to Iceland next June, because my ticket was extended for the one from this year that was canceled. So
yeah, and finally the airlines and all the hotels have kind of reacted. It was a panic time, and people are like, oh, I can't change my flight. I'm like, just wait. It's all going to be sorted out. And now it is, lucky.
Yeah. And I had not made my reservations yet, because I was still trying to figure out, because I was going to the UK for a conference the week before, and then coming to Iceland for your conference. And I was so excited about that. And I was trying to work out the details about my daughters to see if they were going to come with me and what we were going to do in between, and if they were going to come to Iceland or not. We had not even worked any of that out yet. And then their spring break trips, because they were going, one was going to Europe and one was going to the Caribbean. They both got canceled. They moved home. And it all of a sudden it was like, oh, I think maybe this isn't going to happen. So
yeah,
it was good that I had not done that yet.
We'll make it even better in 2021.
Let's definitely make it better in 2021. I think I'm really excited about it and look forward to meeting you again, and also meeting people that are in your community and network. It'll be fun.
It will be fun.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And I will talk to you soon.
Thank you for having me, Sally.
You're welcome. Thank you for listening today. Subscribe to this podcast to hear all our episodes. Go to shoutyourcause.com to our podcast page for information on our guests and notes from this show.